Hey everyone, welcome back to Bill's Retro Gaming Show. And in today's video, I want to take a closer look at some of the leaks that came out this past week regarding upcoming Arcade1up cabinets. Specifically, I want to look at the big three that everybody's been talking about. Now, if you're not familiar with this, first off, you can check out my video from earlier this week where I talked about these leaks that came out. But basically what happened was earlier this past week, retailer Gamefly, which I had no clue they even sold Arcade1up units, but apparently retailer Gamefly put up a list on their website of Arcade1up cabinets, the current ones that are out there that they sell, and upcoming ones throughout this year. And it just caused a whole tizzy, for lack of a better term, throughout the community of people speculating and going crazy because it mentions some very high-profile games that people have been wanting and asking Arcade1up for a long time, with dates that they're set to go, that they're set to come out later this year. Now, shortly after that happened, the listings completely changed and all that stuff is gone from their site. There's none of that on their site left. I think it took maybe an hour for that to be up and down. A lot of people, captured video of what the pages looked like. There are several screenshots on Reddit that you can find. Again, you can check out my video. You can check out some of the other videos from guys like Console Kits and Michael B. the Game Genie. Everybody covered this. So there's a lot of information out there on these leaks. All right, but what I want to do today is I want to just do a little bit of extra speculation. All right, let's just say, for the sake of argument, that these leaks are 100% legitimate and these cabinets are coming out this year. Let's just go with that premise just for fun. Okay, this is just meant to be a fun video on speculating. The three biggies that I'm talking about are NFL Blitz, which everybody has been asking for. Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which, again, we'll get into a little bit more. Is that actually Marvel vs. Capcom 2, or is it like a 2.0 version of the Marvel vs. Capcom cabinets that they've already done? Let's talk about that. And Time Crisis, a new shooter. So let's just, for total fun, let's just say, yes, those are real. Yes, those are coming out this year. What other games do you think will be on those cabs besides the three main marquee ones that were mentioned in the listing? Marvel vs. Capcom 2, NFL Blitz, Time Crisis. Let's start with that and let's have a little fun, okay? So, here we go. And I'm going to start with one of the ones that I'm looking most forward to, assuming these are real. And I'm going to start with the one that I am looking probably most forward to, and that would be the Marvel vs. Capcom one. Now, a lot of people, since this came out, have been debating back and forth. Does this mean that it's going to include Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the game, or is this going to be a second Marvel vs. Capcom unit, basically, like the original that they put maybe with extra games or extra features? All right, so let's go back and forth with that. First off, let's start with this. Arcade1up already has a head-to-head cocktail table or counter, head-to-head counter table, however you want to say it, for Marvel vs. Capcom. And if you look at the games list on this, it is basically all of the Marvel/Capcom games that were released on multiple upright cabinets, but in a cocktail table format, which is really, it's kind of cool and all, but I gotta tell you, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the split screen like this. because it's a 17-inch screen like you get on the big uprights, but in order to play this head to head, they basically split it in two, so you're looking at the equivalent of two smaller screens, one on top of each other. So it makes the play field much smaller when you're playing. I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but for me, basically, let's just say it this way. I want this, but I want it in an upright. So let's go with that. And what are the games that come on that? Well, it comes with X-Men Children of the Atom, Marvel Superheroes, The Punisher, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, and then the two console games, X-Men Mutant Apocalypse and Marvel Superheroes War Gems. So you get these 8 games on this cocktail table. So what am I hoping for? I'm hoping for this in an upright. Put this into a 3/4 cab with the risers and give me all of these games on it. Add Wi-Fi online. Make sure it has Wi-Fi online played. Make sure it has Wi-Fi leaderboards. That's a must for sure with these games. You want to be able, especially considering these are all multiplayer. These are all, at least two player fighters. You've got the Punisher, which is a beat 'em up. I'm not sure about the console games if you can play those 2 players or not, but those are just filler as far as I'm concerned. All right, they might be a little bit of fun, but they're not. The meat and bones is those Capcom arcade games on this. Now, if this actually has Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on there also as the marquee title for the cabinet, that would just make it that much better, without a doubt. I'm sold on this in an upright, on this being a Marvel vs. Capcom 2.0 cab. I think a lot of people would like this, for sure. I didn't buy any of the originals. If I could get in one cabinet what's in like 2 or 3 different ones that they make right now, so much the better. This is basically the Marvel Legacy cab that I did a video on a few weeks back saying I wanted. So kudos for this one. If this is, assuming it's real, this is what I want, and I think it's very easy. That's why I picked this one first, because I think it's very easy to determine what the games are going to be on it. I think this is the way they're going to go. Now, do I think they might throw some extra games on there? Maybe. Maybe some things we haven't seen before. Maybe you get a Captain Commando on there. Maybe you get a different fighter game that we haven't seen before. Bionic Commando, something like that we haven't seen. I'll tell you, I'm warming up to the idea of Aliens vs. Predator coming on a cab. Now, do I think maybe that would be its own thing with its own marquee? Maybe. Do I think maybe they could add it to something like this? Maybe. And the reason I'm warming up to it more is the more I think about it, the more you got to realize that these games, while being Capcom games, they're also Marvel games. So you have the Marvel licensing. When you look at Aliens vs. Predator, you've got, yes, on the one hand, it's a Capcom game. But on the other hand, it's a 20th Century Fox game, because that's where Aliens and Predators come from. Now, who owns Marvel and who owns 20th Century Fox? Disney. Disney owns both now. So, is it that far of a stretch to say they might be able to get a license for both and put both on one cab? No idea. No idea. But the fact that Disney now owns both, I think, might make it more likely than, a lot of us were thinking way back when, especially before the merger of Fox with Disney. So, hey, I'd love that. I'd love to see Aliens vs. Predator on a cab like this. Put these 8 games on there. Put Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on there. That gives you 9. Give me 3 more games, and you're looking at a legacy cab. Just like all the others. Okay, granted, I know the newer legacy cabs are going to have 14 games, but let's just not be greedy and let's stick with 12. Okay. And again, I've said this before. I would love Cadillacs and Dinosaurs on there. Again, little bit of a different licensing thing, because Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, based on an original comic graphic novel, which is from an indie publisher. I want to say Kitchen Sink Press is the original publisher for it. Now, do I think it's going to be a lot cheaper to buy a license from an indie like Kitchen Sink Press than I do from somebody like Disney and Marvel? Oh, absolutely. Do I think that they'll be able to put them together on a cab? Maybe. Not sure. As far as wish lists goes, that's on me. I like that game. I think it would be a lot of fun. I think it would fit a theme on a cab like this. I think Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, I think Aliens vs. Predator, they would fit this kind of overall sci-fi superhero theme that you would get from a cab like this. So that's the first one. And we'll leave it there with that one. But that's the first one. And I think that's probably the easiest one to speculate what games would be coming on it, if it's real and if it's coming out. All right, so let's move on to the next one. And I think the next one I want to tackle is another one that I'm really looking forward to, which is Time Crisis. So Time Crisis, obviously is a shooter game with a light gun. And I think that most people think that if you're going to do this, you're going to do Time Crisis 2, and Time Crisis 3. Let's take a little bit of a look at Time Crisis 2 for starters. Okay, so here's a little bit of the gameplay from Time Crisis 2. Now, the original Time Crisis, I believe, was a single-player game. Time Crisis 2 stepped that up with two-player. And what was interesting with Time Crisis 2 was that not only could you play two players, but the cabinet itself was actually a dual-screen cabinet. And if you're playing two players, you can each basically take branching paths while you're playing the game. So like you see, like in the gameplay here, you have the first person playing on one end of the screen, and you see the second person on the other side of the screen, and they're both fighting together. And then, of course, you'd come together and you could play against bosses and different stuff. But it made the game a little more interesting. Now, I'm not sure how they would do something like that in a 3/4-inch Arcade1up cab. So if you look here, here's a screenshot that I found of the original Time Crisis 2 cab. And it is a monster. It is literally like two games glued together side by side for you to play. You got player one on the left there with his or her own monitor. You got player two on the right with his or her own monitor. And you basically play the game together but separate, kind of. You play the same game, the same levels, but within the game you could take different branching paths. Now, I suppose one option is to do something like this and have it just be a single-player version of the game with one light gun. But I don't think that's what people want. I think people want to be able to play this as a two-player game, like Terminator, like Buck Hunter. You want those dual guns. You want to be able to play this side by side together. Now, I would hope that maybe at the very least they'd put a bigger monitor in this. Maybe we'd get a 19-inch like on the new Golden Tee or on the new NBA Jam. Maybe make this more of an XL cab than a 3/4 cab. But I still don't know how you do that dual screen thing. Now, thinking back to when this was first released for the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 2 did allow two players to play. And you had options. You could either play with two PS2s linked together on two screens with two versions of the game and play it basically the same way you play the arcade unit with the branching storylines. If you were playing it on a single PS2, single screen, it actually did like a kind of a split screen thing. Now, how well that would work on a 17 or 19-inch monitor with the Sinden light guns, not sure. But they would definitely have to make some concessions or, get rid of the branching parts for that game, which was such a big part of that game that I'm not sure how you do it. So, I'm a little bit interested in how they might do that. But let's just get back to the games that I think would be on this. And again, I'm going to stick with Time Crisis, Time Crisis 2, Time Crisis 3, and you know what? Maybe Crisis Zone. Crisis Zone was kind of like an offshoot of Time Crisis, but I think it's doable in terms of, same kind of game engine as these games. Once you get into like the Time Crisis 4, Time Crisis 5, I think you're getting into, you know, like PS3 style graphics, you know, newer arcade graphics that might be a little bit much for the PCB that they're going to wind up putting in this unit. So I'll stick with just the first ones. Time Crisis 2, Time Crisis 3. I think Crisis Zone was right in there, came out somewhere between 2 and 3, I want to say. Little bit different play mechanic because that one was a single player game and the gun was more like shaped like a machine gun, kind of more like the Terminator ones were, whereas the original Time Crisis were more like a handgun. But I think they could still do the same play mechanic even if they make the gun on the cabinet look like the Time Crisis guns. And I think it would be a lot of fun, and I think people would enjoy that as an extra game. Now, what other games can they put on here? Well, Time Crisis is Namco. And Namco came out with a lot of these polygonal type shooters in the arcades in the early 90s. So I think there's a lot to choose from. I'm just going to look at two that I think would work great with a cab like this. So first up, how about Point Blank? I think Point Blank would be a lot of fun on a cabinet like this because there are so many little mini games in Point Blank that I think, you know, people would have a lot of fun with. It's 2 players, you can play at the same time on it. Doesn't use the pedal, obviously, like Time Crisis does, but so what? You don't need that. You know, not every game needs to have that. But throw a thing like Point Blank. There's so much replay value in a game like Point Blank, or even Point Blank 2, or maybe both, that I think both of those would be great on this cab. It would give it a ton of replay value, and people would just love it. I remember Point Blank. I had Point Blank, I want to say, on the PS2 with the Move controllers, and I'm trying to remember if I had the gun. I think I did have one of the gun cons, and it was so much fun to play. So much fun, and to have this in an arcade unit would just be fantastic. So I really hope that if they're going to do this, that they put a game like Point Blank on here, or Point Blank 2, or even both. So here's another fun one from Namco that came out in 2000. This is Ninja Assault. This is another, you know, 2-player co-op shooter game. Again, doesn't have that same cover play mechanic with the pedals that Time Crisis does, but again, you know, we're just trying to round out the cab with more games. And I think a game like this would be a lot of fun because it's a little lesser known than some of the others. So to put something like this on there, I think people would have just a whole lot of fun with. I think it's, you know, came out around the same time, 90s, 2000. I think it might be doable. And I just think it would be a lot of fun. So we're looking at 6 or 7 possible games on this cab, which is probably more than any other shooter has. I mean, you look at Terminator 2. Terminator 2 has Terminator 2. You look at the Buck Hunter games, and there's, what, three or four games on there? So this would definitely put it above those games in terms of amount of games and playability. Now, I think even if they just did the first 3 Time Crisis, that, you know, they'd have people wanting this cab for sure. But throw on Crisis Zone, throw on 1 or 2 of the Point Blanks, and maybe throw on a game like Ninja Assault. And there's probably others that I'm forgetting about or you know, not thinking of for this. And for sure, tell me in the comments if there is a Namco shooter, because it's got to be. We got to stick with that. Don't give me Virtual Cop. Virtual Cop is Sega. Virtual Cop's not going to be on this, okay? But if there is a Namco shooter that you remember from the arcade that you really liked that came out 90s, maybe even early 2000, that would work with this cab, I'd love to hear what you guys think and what you would love to see on a cab like this. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on the Time Crisis cab, what games I think might come on it. Certainly, you know, kind of a wish list of the games I'd like to see on it. Definitely interested to see what they do with that Time Crisis 2 and 3 play mechanic with the dual players. Hopefully, you know, assuming this is real and this is coming, hopefully they figured out a way to do it that makes sense and makes it playable in a way that's fun and, you know, doesn't really go against the way that the original arcade game worked. Hopefully they do find a way to make it 2 players and not a single player gun game, because I just don't think that that would be as exciting as having a 2-player gun game. So, that's it for that one. Let's move on to the last one, all right? And the last one I want to talk about is, I think, probably the one that's got the most people excited, and that would be NFL Blitz. Now, I've said a lot about NFL Blitz in the past. I'm not going to rehash that. I do think there are, just like with Time Crisis with the 2-player, I think there are hurdles to overcome with this game. But with this game, it's a little bit different. With this game, it has to do with the way the game played, the violence in the game, the licensing of the teams and players and things like that. Hopefully, again, let's go with these are real. Let's go with these are coming. If these are real and these are coming, hopefully they have figured that all out, and hopefully they haven't had to make too many concessions with it to get it out there. All right? I mean, if they really kind of censor a lot of the violence in the game, if they have to take out teams and players and stuff, I don't think people are going to be as excited about this as if it was the arcade game, exactly as it was in the arcade. I think you can make little concessions here and there, and people will be, you know, but okay, we still really like the game, we still want it. But if you just nerf this thing completely, people aren't going to be as excited. So let's just start with that, and let's just move on from there with the games. All right. So I think in terms of NFL Blitz, there's really only 3 in the arcade that people are going to be wanting. Yes, there are console versions that came out, but just in terms of the arcade, you have NFL Blitz. You have NFL Blitz 99, and you have NFL Blitz 2000. And this is a look at NFL Blitz 2000 that is playing right now. And I think, you know, for a cab like that, those are probably the no-brainers. All right, I think you have to include those 3 games to make this interesting to people. I don't think you can just have one NFL Blitz game. I think you got to have all 3. And I think if you can do NFL Blitz, I think you can do 99 and 2000 as well, for sure. Again, are they going to have to make concessions and change things? I don't know, maybe. But just in terms of what games do I think will be on that, those 3 for sure. So, could they add anything else to this? Yeah, I think they could. I think they definitely could. And I know people have talked about Hit the Ice, which is a hockey game. Has a very similar, the cab is, again, another 4-player, very similar setup to NFL Blitz. And I think that would be a really good one, a really fun one to add to a cab like this. I think that would add to the I think that would add to the replay value. And I think people would really like that. But beyond that one, I think probably the one that makes the most sense, if you're going to add anything to this beyond the 3 NFL Blitz games, the one that makes the most sense to me would be NBA Showtime. So one of the reasons I think NBA Showtime has to be on this cab is because it was so linked with NFL Blitz back in the arcade. So much so that Midway made a dual cab for those 2 games. You had the Midway Sports Station. The Midway Sports Station was NFL Blitz 2000 and NBA Showtime in one cab with dual art on it. Now, do I think that the cab that Arcade1up is going to be a Showtime cab with dual art? No, I don't, because they've been listing it as NFL Blitz. I think it's going to be a cab with NFL Blitz art, with the original NFL Blitz art on it. That's my thinking, my speculation. I think that's what people want more than anything. But I think people would love to have NBA Showtime on this cab too. Since NBA Showtime did not come with the NBA Jam cab, it makes a lot of sense to put it here. Yes, I know you're talking about football, you're talking about hockey, you're talking about basketball, you're talking about 3 different types of games on one cab, but I think people would love it. I really do. I think if you had a Blitz cab that included Hit the Ice and Showtime, look, you just put out Blitz with the 3 Blitz games on it, you're going to sell. You're going to sell them. People are going to buy it. There's no doubt in my mind that that thing is going to sell like crazy. But if you throw these on there too, not only are they going to sell more, but I think you're also going to bring in the people who also like hockey, who also like basketball, who are just big sports fans, who would love to have a cab with 3 different types of games on it, 4-player, that they can play with their buddies. Now again, you need Wi-Fi on this. You need leaderboards on this, just like with the Jam, with the NBA Jam Cab, for sure, in order to make this work. But then again, I think Arcade1up is going that direction with all of their games now. I don't think we're going to see a new cab come out that doesn't at least have leaderboards on it. I just don't see that it makes sense to not include that anymore. But yeah, I mean, that's basically what I wanted to do. I wanted to look at these 3 games and just kind of talk about my thoughts and speculations on what other games besides the main marquee ones they might put on it. So let me throw it to you guys now in the comments. What do you think of my picks? Do you think that, again, let's assume these are real. Let's not get into these aren't coming, this is all speculation, blah, blah, blah. We know that. We know this is all speculation. Nothing's confirmed until it's confirmed. We all know that. Let's just have fun with this. Let's just say, yes, these are 100% real. They're absolutely coming this year. What games do you think are going to be on that? Do you agree with my picks on what games should be on this? Do you think I'm way off base? Did I miss a bunch that you would want to see? Especially like on that Marvel vs. Capcom, because there's so many Capcom shooters and, so many Capcom fighters and beat 'em ups out there that they have their pick of the litter to put on a cab like that. So what games did I not say that you would love to see on there? Or do you think they're just going to rehash some of the other ones that they've already done? Do you think they'll put a Street Fighter or Darkstalkers on there from, the other cabs that they've done before? What about Time Crisis? What do you think of, how do you think they're going to handle that 2-player play mechanic? Do you like my picks? Did I miss your favorite Namco shooter that you think needs to be on that cab to go with it? And then NFL Blitz. What do you think? Do you think they should put NBA Showtime on there? Do you think they should put Hit the Ice? Do you think maybe instead of making a Blitz cab, they should make a Sports Station cab with the Blitz and Showtime art on it and do it that way instead? Let me know. I'm curious to know what you guys think. But I'm going to stop here. That's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. Again, I truly appreciate my subscribers. The subscriptions have been growing the last week or so, and I really appreciate that. I'm coming up close to 100 now, which is great. So I'm definitely excited about that. I just hope to keep pushing along and get to that 1,000 sometime within the next several months. So that's definitely the goal. So if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscription button, hit the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I put out new videos. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and, share it wherever you think it's appropriate. Again, those things just help the channel grow, and I really appreciate it. So that's it for this one, and I will see you again in the future real soon. Have a good one, guys. Take care.